You're listening to KOUG Radio. Listen live online at KOUGradio.org.
What is going on, everyone? It's the top of the hour, and welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Sports Takes with Dom. I'm your host, Dominic Persinger, live with KOUG Radio. First off, I'm coming off kind of a small cold from over the weekend, so I kind of lost my voice a little bit and may occasionally have a little bit of the sniffles, but just I let all of you guys know that. But I'd rather host the show while I'm at about 80% rather than just cancel the show altogether. So for our March 28th episode, today we're recapping March Madness from the Sweet 16 picks over the weekend, from Thursday and Friday, and then the Elite Eight over the weekend. And then we're recapping the past Saturday's UFC event main card. And then we're going to talk about the Portland Trailblazers, like kind of like the current state they're in and kind of where they're going to go for the next offseason. And then we're going to close out with some of the news of the day. So starting off with the March Madness, I unfortunately lost all of my Final Four teams for my bracket. Very unfortunate, but I can probably say I'm very similar to a lot of other people in this year. So I lost all my teams, and UCLA, Houston, and Bama all lost in the Sweet 16 this weekend. Very unfortunate. And then I lost Duke to Tennessee in the second round last weekend or 2 weekends ago. So Houston lost kind of a nail biter. Bama lost to San Diego State. I told you guys to kind of stay away from Alabama. They weren't probably going to go as far as I originally thought. And then UCLA lost that nail biter to Gonzaga, which I'll go over in a second. So recapping the predictions from me, Ben, and Coop on Thursday's podcast. We did our first prediction was Gonzaga and UCLA for the Thursday night game. And Coop and Ben both like UCLA in that game. And unfortunately, they both got that one wrong when the Gonzaga won at the end. They did get it partially right at the beginning where UCLA had I believe a 13, 14 point lead going into halftime, and they blew that lead. And Ben and Coop are both huge on Amari Bailey, the freshman, and they were actually partially right there. Amari Bailey hit a deep three late in the game to put UCLA up with about 18, 20 seconds. And then if it weren't for Gonzaga, hitting the near half court shot to take the lead, then Amari Bailey would have been a hero. So good call by Coop and Ben. Just unfortunate because March can have a lot of madness, guys. So moving on to the next game with Alabama and San Diego State. So crazy that another number 1 seed lost in Alabama. And Ben and Coop both had Bama here, but got that wrong again. Kind of like how Coop was saying on Thursday, San Diego State was just very lanky. They played incredible defense. They hit key shots down the stretch. And the big thing they were also saying was San Diego State was going to make someone other than Brandon Miller for Bama score. I was pretty excited about Brandon Miller in this game because, like I said, he's probably a potential Blazers candidate that they're going to draft in this upcoming draft. Brandon Miller was awful. He shot 3 of 19. That's just pitiful numbers, horrible shooting splits. I think Miller's draft stock definitely took a tremendous hit from his horrible March Madness run. I want to say he had 29 points in the tournament on 42 shots. I want to say just horrible numbers, very inefficient. And even though I had Bama as my runner-up in my bracket, I kind of told you guys to stay away from them. So I didn't trust them versus an elite defense and how it matched up. So great job by San Diego State here. And now they're in the Final Four because they also won on Saturday. So then another Friday game that Coop and Ben predicted, they were split here. So one of them was obviously going to get it right. Ben liked Texas, Coop liked Xavier, and Texas beat Xavier. So unfortunately, Coop went 0-3 and Ben went 1-2. Texas had a decent lead the whole game, and they didn't really look back and ended up winning by a good amount. They were both right about this game being high scoring, but Xavier just couldn't hit shots in the second half. And I'm making this a quick note. I'm not going to take official picks on this March Madness because I'm not a college basketball genius, and neither the other two, even though they watch a little more than me. So I'm not going to take official a record here for official picks. We're just having fun with it. And then for the teams we didn't like to advance, luckily we all got all of our teams right. I said I didn't like Bama to advance. I liked them losing to San Diego State in the Sweet 16. Got that right. And then Ben liked Arkansas losing to UConn, and UConn killed them. I think everyone was kind of misled by Arkansas because they beat Kansas, the defending champ from last year. But Arkansas's offense was not as good as everyone thought. And then Coop had Houston. He didn't trust Houston, and they lost to Miami. So congrats on both of them on picking a strong seed to lose. And then this Elite Eight this past weekend, it featured an upset of 3 of the 4 games, which is pretty crazy. And it's the first time in the history of the tournament, no number one seed made it into this past weekend from the Sweet 16. So none of the 4-1 seeds made it to the Elite Eight. Pretty crazy. I kept mentioning how a one seed has made it to the finals the past 5 years straight. So I guess that's a hard part for me because I was kind of guaranteeing that. I thought it was a guarantee because Houston and Bama were both really strong contenders, but unfortunately, it's just a really weird year. Lots of parity. And then so the Final Four is going to be number 9 FAU taking on number 5 San Diego State. And on the other side, we got number 4 Miami taking on number 5 UConn. So this is also the first time in March Madness history there's no top 3 seed in the Final Four. That's right. None of the top 3 seeds from any of the quadrant made it. So pretty much the top 12, none of the top 12 teams made it. So we got 9, 5, and a 4 and a 5. Pretty crazy to me. I'm probably not going to do any more predictions here because I don't know enough about these lower seeds. I do think UConn probably has the higher advantage here and probably wins it all just because their games have been close. I mean, looking right here at their games, they've won by 24 in the first round, 15 in the second, 23 in the Sweet 16, and they beat Gonzaga by 18 last weekend. So, I mean, Gonzaga, they had that incredible win versus UCLA and then got smoked by UConn. So, I guess I'd like UConn to win it all, but my predictions mean nothing at this point, guys, because March Madness, like I said, truly madness. So I would just say enjoy the Final Four games this Saturday and then the championship game next Monday. I guess I'm rooting for Florida Atlantic and Miami because they've never gotten this far in the tournament. So it'd be pretty cool to see them match up. And both teams from Florida, I guess that's pretty cool too. And then moving on to my UFC Fight Night San Antonio recap. So this is a little more of a bright spot from last episode where I got all my predictions right for this UFC card. Pretty incredible start for this kind of segment of this show. So I broke down the 5-fight main card. I didn't do all the prelims because it was just a free fight night. The prelims weren't really as prominent. So unfortunately, right before the main card started, I believe 4 o'clock last Saturday, Manel Kape versus Alex Perez. I highly, let's say, I was really excited for this fight. Fairly highly anticipated, but it got canceled right before the main card due to Alex Perez having a weight loss illness just from weight cutting. And it's kind of just crazy by Perez because he's had a fight canceled 9 out of the last 10 fights. That's right, 9 out of the last 10. That's why he's only fought once, I believe, in the last 2.5 years. So yeah, I only had predictions settled for 4 fights on this card, but they all hit, so I'm not going to get into those. So the first fight I had a prediction on the main card was a flyweight 125 fight where number 13 Macy Barber beat number 11 Andrea Lee by a very controversial split decision. So I had Macy Barber here, but I don't know if Barber won. I'm glad I started at 1-0 on the card and got Barber by decision, so I got that right. But I just don't know if she won. I mean, she was taken down a lot. Like, looking at here, Lee had over 5 minutes of ground control time in a 15-minute fight. That's pretty significant. Then there's the argument, like, Barber did land more damage on the feet, and in theory in MMA, you have to prioritize damage over, ground control time because ground control time isn't as significant. So damage is higher valued, obviously. I thought it was a bad decision and Lee probably won, but looking back, I watched back the fight. Barber won by damage, so I'm not too surprised here. But Barber wasn't as impressive as I thought. She's not ready to get shot up the division, kind of like Casey O'Neill on last week's card where she ended up losing. So yeah, I think Barber has too many close fights and controversial fights because this is her second controversial fight in the last 4 fights. I think give her another fighter that's coming off a win, like give her Amanda Hebes at number 9 because I believe Macy Barber will probably be at like 11 or 12 after this fight. And yeah, Amanda Hebes is coming off a win 2 weeks ago, so they kind of line up right with the calendar. They'll probably both be ready in like 4 or 5 months. So yeah, I think match up Barber and Hebes in like July or August, and we'll kind of give like a test to Barber, kind of like a fraud check, kind of see if she's actually ready to jump up that division. So then moving on to the feature fight, third to last fight, we had a featherweight 145 fight from Nate Landwehr, Nate the Train in the UFC. I just love his accent, guys. And he's always awesome on the mic after all of his wins. And he beat Austin Lingo by a late second round rear naked choke. So my predictions were now 2-0. I had Nate by a third round submission, so I got that partially wrong, but I'll take the submission prop here. I got the submission right. So Nate was awesome on the mic, like I said. Here's a quote I have from him. It's just awesome. I got a highlight reel like Evel Knievel. I got swagger like Elvis Presley, and I'll be damned if I ain't handsome. He's just such a likable guy. He's funny. You never really know what to expect. Like, he's a funny guy on the mic, but he always comes out with something just completely random again. So yeah, awesome job by Nate Landwehr here. So Nate was originally supposed to fight a top 15 opponent, and this kind of showed here because Austin Lingo is not a ranked opponent by any means. I would say Austin's probably more near like the 30 to 35 ranks versus Nate originally supposed to fight a top 15 opponent. Nate was just faster. He had way higher output in the first round than Lingo. They were pretty competitive in the second round. They boxed for the whole first 2 rounds, didn't go on the ground at all. Then at one point, Nate the Train, he knocked out Lingo's mouthpiece, and pretty much as the guy was reacting to his mouthpiece get knocked out, almost trying to pick it up, Nate took advantage of the arms, reaching out and exposed. He lashed onto the back and sank in the rear naked choke. I believe, Nate's on an impressive 3-fight win streak now over Ludovic Klein, David Onama, and now Austin Lingo. I think this fight proved that he needs fans for every Nate fight. Like, no more of the apex for Nate. I think Nate needs to be on pay-per-views, or he needs to be on the fight nights where they sell out arenas. Don't put him in the empty arena. He's too valuable for that, especially because I think he's 35 years old. So, I mean, he's not getting any younger. That's pretty old for the lower weight division. So I say get him back in there soon. Get him in a fight with fans, obviously, like I said. And let's get Nate the Train versus original opponent that backed out about a month ago, Alex Caceres. I think he's about number 15 on the featherweight rankings. So get this on like a summer pay-per-view card, maybe like June or July. I think, because Nate took a little damage here, so he can get back in soon. And then we have the co-main event. Former bantamweight champion Holly Holm destroyed Yana Santos across 3 rounds by a dominant unanimous decision. So Holly won every round of this fight, arguably every minute. She wrestled most of the fight, which is pretty impressive because, she has a major boxing background. I got the decision right, so I was 3-0 now. I got Holly right. I figured she was going to strike more, but she ended up having 10 minutes of control time in a 15-minute fight. That is grueling. 2-0 of the fight, which was on top of the other opponent. So either way, I was 3-0 at this point. But even though I kind of got like the technicality part of the fight wrong. The worst part of this fight was Holly, among those 10 minutes, she had full mount over her opponent for 7 of those minutes, but couldn't get a finish. She couldn't knock her out or get a submission, which was kind of crazy to watch. Her cardio looked great though, and the fact that she's 41, she looked like she was 31 out there. She didn't look like she's aging at all. This fight kind of proved this weight division still pretty weak though. This was number 4 versus number 6. And there's just a major drop off from the top 5. I thought Holm arguably won her last fight, even though she didn't. And now she beat number 6. So I'm thinking for her next fight, because there's such a big drop off, don't give her someone else outside of the top 5. Give her like a top 5 opponent, maybe for like a title eliminator fight. Like we know Amanda Nunes, who has the belt, is going to fight Raquel Pennington this summer. So let's have former champ Juliana Pena fight Holly Holm for the number 1 contender fight, maybe like this August. Or maybe on the undercard of when Nunes and Pennington fight. I believe they're fighting in June, so if they could, try to sneak them onto that card. And then the winner of Nunes and Pennington takes on the winner of Pena and Holm for a title fight maybe in like January or February 2024, sometime in that early quarter. And the main event of the night, I was so excited, guys, to close off this night with 4-0 on picks and got all the method of victories right. I swept the night. I was very excited. So I'm now 15-3-1 after 2 prediction episodes. So that's an 83% rate. And so number 5, Corey Sandhagen in the main event. He beat number 3, Marlon Chito Vera by a split decision. So Corey pretty much, he tripled Marlon's strikes from what I can see. And I called everything right here. I said Corey would win the early rounds, and he smoked Chito in the early rounds. And I pretty much said Chito would have to get the knockout late in order to make up for the rest of the fight because he wouldn't win on the scorecards. And Corey's never been knocked out. So that was a great matchup stylistically for Corey. I said people like Vera, people like Vera as the underdog, but Sandhagen was going to win on the scorecards inevitably, I think. So Corey won 4 out of 5 rounds. I think arguably 5. One judge gave Vera 3 rounds and the win. So that's why it was a split decision. It wasn't unanimous in Corey's decision when I think he arguably won, 23 minutes of the 25-minute fight. Like, I don't know how a judge gave Vera 3 rounds. I think there's more of a case for Corey winning 5 rounds than Vera even winning 2. And yeah, so that might be the worst scorecard ever. I mean, worst scorecard of the year I've seen so far. That's a clear unanimous decision for Corey. So the judge's credibility is definitely in question there. Once again, I don't get paid for this stuff, but I can judge a fight better than that judge. So Vera, he's probably not getting a title shot anytime soon because that was kind of his fight to get one. He needs to find more ways to win rounds and not just, bait that knockout, because especially in this division that's really skilled, there's a lot of durable fighters in the top 5, and I don't see Vera knocking a lot of these guys out, Merab, Sterling, now Sandhagen, maybe even Sean O'Malley. And yeah, he needs to find ways to win rounds, not just win by knockout. And Sandhagen's on a 2-fight win streak coming off the wins over Vera and then Song Yudong before in September. So Sandhagen has challenged for the belt 2 fights ago, so he probably needs to get another win. I'd say give him Merab Dvalishvili or Sean O'Malley for a number 1 contender fight, because Aljamain Sterling's fighting Henry Cejudo in May for the belt. So there's probably going to be someone else fighting probably in the later half of the year, maybe early next year again for the belt. So let's give I say Merab versus Sandhagen first, the winner of that fights the winner of Cejudo and Sterling again, maybe later in the year or early half of 2024. And then moving on to Blazers basketball. I haven't talked about them much on this podcast just because they've been awful lately, and there have been a lot of bright spots this season. Other than Damian Lillard averaging 32 a game, being third in lead in scoring, and pretty much having his best statistical season to date. So this past weekend, they announced they're shutting down Lillard for the season, and they're pretty much calling it a year, pretty much waving the white flag. They're 32-43. They're 5 games out of a playoff spot now with 7 games left. They're 1-9 in their last 10 games. They're not making the playoffs, most likely. Like, there's 99% chance they're not making it. So just rest Dame. I think Dame has kind of like a lingering calf injury too. So yeah, it makes sense why they're shutting him down for the season. The season's been the defense has been terrible like always, and there wasn't another consistent scorer next to Dame, which has always been the issue since LaMarcus Aldridge left. Like Anthony Simons and Jeremy Grant were bright spots, and they were good, and they could average 20 a game, but they weren't consistent. They were scoring 10 points some nights, 30 the next. You can't have that. You're not going to win consistent games like that. You're not going to make the playoffs or even win in the playoffs like that. I think if the Blazers lose out, they have the 5th best odds, like a 12% chance to get the number 1 draft pick, and Victor Wembanyama, who's probably like that lock to be number 1 pick. So I think they just go for the best draft pick at this point. Just try to lose his last 7 games. I know it sounds awful, but they're not making the playoffs. Might as well get in the best draft position as possible. I just, say tank the rest of the season. So where do the Blazers go from here? I think if Lillard wants to be traded somewhere else, it sounds so hard to say. I'm fine with that. I think just Lillard deserves a winning team. And also just the fact that if he wants out, this is the most he'll ever be worth in a trade. So grant him that access to go get traded to another team and get, a haul of draft picks and a couple of players back. But that's only if Lillard wants out. You don't trade him unless he wants out. And if they don't trade Dame, I say you got to blow up this team probably again. You probably have to trade Anthony Simons, Nurkic, and then maybe like the high draft pick they get for like a superstar like, like Joel Embiid or, Jaylen Brown's not happy with the Boston Celtics where he's at. You got to trade probably 2 decent starters and, the high draft pick for a decent player. But that's probably the last resort if you want to see Dame even get close to competing for a ring. It'd probably be sad to see Simons go, but I think in the last couple of weeks there has been one bright spot, and that's Shaden Sharp, who's the rookie. I think since Dame's been out, Sharp's been given starter minutes just, to see like what the rookie can do and, give him as much experience as possible while the season ends in his rookie year. And he's been amazing. He's been amazing in while Dame's been out. When Sharp averages 35 minutes a game, he averages 25 points a game. So, you raise those minutes, he's still very efficient and scores a lot. In his last 3 games starting in place of Damian Lillard, he's scored 24, a career high, 24 points to tie that career high. And then 2 nights ago, he had 29 to break both of those. So all career highs in his last 3 games starting. as a 19-year-old rookie. You got to keep that in mind. He's only 19. Like when Damian Lillard was 19, he was a freshman in college, sophomore in college. And he was about 2 more years away from even playing in the league. So I'd like to think Shaedon will be just as good as Dame and just as good as Dame was in his rookie year in 2 years from now, a 20-point a game score. So I kind of wrote this down. Some top 5 priorities for the Blazers this offseason. So first off, I think you have to involve Dame in like all the decision making. I don't think they've done that enough in the past because they haven't landed a star. I mean, maybe there's more to that than just Dame being involved with it, but I think you involve them with all the decision making and looking at the potential chances of landing a star. I think you look around, like I said, for trade assets for a star like Joel Embiid. If the Philadelphia 76ers lose in like the first or second round in the East, which the East is very deep this year in the playoffs, which isn't very unlikely. So I think you could definitely see Embiid maybe requesting a trade, especially if you see Harden leaving this offseason too. I think also this offseason you get Sharp ready for starting. The potential of, if you ship out Simons, you just got to get Sharp ready for that kind of boost in that second season because he's only going to be 20 next year, starting in a big role. I think you need to upgrade the bench too with another kind of decent scorer, reliable scorer. Maybe someone like, like a Jordan Clarkson type guy. Not saying we need Jordan Clarkson, but just someone kind of that caliber, someone who can give, 15 and 9 off the bench. It's just always very helpful, especially when sometimes in the past, the second unit has struggled when Dame goes to the bench. So you need that, consistent scorer when Dame's not scoring for the team. I think the big one too is the Blazers need to re-sign Jeremy Grant because, he had a decent first year with the team and they haven't really had a good scoring forward since, LaMarcus Aldridge. So it's been almost 10 years since they've had a good forward like him. So yeah, I think don't overpay Jeremy Grant, but if you can, re-sign him at all costs. And then I have 2 news of the day for you guys. So we'll stay on the NBA side for a second. So as of 3 hours ago, the Brooklyn Nets have ruled out Ben Simmons for the season. So he's currently rehabbing a back injury. And he hasn't contributed much this season anyway. I think this is just big news because Ben Simmons could be out of the league pretty soon. He's about to turn 27. So he's entering, I believe he missed his rookie year 1 year. So I believe this is his 6th season. So he's about to turn 27, come off another season where he didn't even take a single 3-pointer. Yeah, he didn't take a single 3-pointer this season, so he hasn't improved along that lines at all. He's averaging 7 points, only 6 rebounds and 6 assists. Those aren't bad numbers, but considering he was a former number 1 overall draft pick, those are like Draymond Green numbers where he should be like a late first round pick. And he's shooting 44% from the free throw line this year. That's horrible. If you're an NBA player, you should be shooting at least 60%. Someone on the streets, like I could probably toss up 100 free throws and maybe hit 40, 50%. And I'm not Ben Simmons. I'm not shooting free throws every day for a living. And then Ben Simmons also, looking here, he's only played 42 games this season. So he's only played half of the 82 game schedule. That's pretty bad. Especially when you're 27, you should be playing, as much games as possible because you're in the middle of your athletic prime. So I think also there's the fact that if he's not exaggerating his injuries from how much time he's missed in his career, he's had multiple season-ending injuries now with either a back pain or a foot injury. So I think that's kind of huge and something to keep in mind. Not just his drama he brings to teams and stuff he's done in the past, but just the fact that he has an injury history too. It's a big thing. I think within the next 2 years, I could see him moving back to Australia. Kind of forget he's from there sometimes because he played high school ball here and played college here in the United States. So I could definitely see him moving back across the seas to Australia and maybe playing in the NBL, the National Basketball League over there. It's a pretty respectable league. I would say it's probably the 3rd best league after the NBA and the Euro League. So yeah, I think he'd make okay money over there. He'd play at home, in front of his friends and family. And he'd probably be an all-star again in that league because, it's not as competitive as the NBA. So yeah, just interesting news there with Ben Simmons. And then other news of the day and last segment of the day, current Bellator featherweight champion and the former lightweight champion of Bellator, Patricio Pitbull, he'll fight for a championship belt in a 3rd weight class. So even though Bellator is a bit of a step down from the UFC, they still compete with the UFC, and they have fighters who are, I mean, at least their champions are kind of on similar caliber as the UFC's champions. They're just not quite as deep, depth wise in every division as the UFC. But yeah, I think this is just huge here. I mean, he's fighting in a third weight class for a belt. That's never happened before. So Pitbull, pretty sure Pitbull, he's had a belt, 145 and 155. He's the current champ at 145 in Bellator, and he's stepping down to 135. That's just 135 to 155, a 20-pound difference, and he's fighting for championship belts. That's significant. I think, so he'd be the first 3-division champ in any MMA promotion. That's right. There's never been a 3-division champ in the one championship, the UFC, PFL. I mean, you can name all of them, Cage Warriors. There's never been a 3-division champ. There's never been someone, it's really hard to move up and down with weights like that and be on top of the world. I think boxing's happened before in the early 1900s, late 1800s. I'm thinking of the name, Bob Fitzsimmons. But I mean, that's boxing over 100 years ago. I think if Pitbull wins, he probably could be considered the greatest featherweight of all time. It's probably between him and the UFC greats of Alexander Volkanovski, who's the current featherweight champ of the UFC, and former featherweight UFC champ Jose Aldo. And I think even though he's not in the UFC, Pitbull, he's beaten top 5 guys in the world for each belt. He beat Michael Chandler back in 2019. Michael Chandler is now top 5 in the UFC for that lightweight belt. I mean, he beat AJ McKee at featherweight. And kind of a hot take, I mean, I think AJ McKee's right there, top 3 in the world for featherweight as well. And now he's going to fight Sergio Pettis at 135, who's probably currently a top 3 125er in the world. So yeah, I think Pitbull versus Pettis, that's June 17th. I'll definitely be watching that. And yeah, that's 3-division champ status. That would be legendary. And I'd like to see that. Never seen it before in MMA, so that'd be huge. So we are wrapping up this show. 2 quick things for you guys. I'll typically always do a UFC breakdown for normal Saturday events on Thursdays. However, there's no UFC event this weekend, which makes me very sad as well. Also, I'm not going to be in town on Thursday afternoon for my typical live show at 1 o'clock. So I'll be back live at this time with you guys all next Tuesday on April 4th. Thanks for tuning in to Sports Takes with Dom. I'm Dominic Persinger for the KOUG Radio.